Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Museopunks, the podcast for the Progressive Museum. My name's Jeff, and I'm here with my co-host, Suze. How's it going?
Things are pretty good. Day 2 of conference. I haven't had that much sleep, but I'm still feeling pretty inspired by everything that I've been seeing so far. What about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a whirlwind so far, and some great sessions and some great things happening here and themes emerging. I think we're trying to address a lot of that here with these shows, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really funny that so far one of the themes I've been picking up on from the conference has been these ideas of play and creativity and inspiration. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
And so we actually, got this theme, organized some weeks ago. We didn't realize this was going to be a sub-theme of the conference, and then to arrive and discover that this is actually a topic of conversation happening anyway is a really lovely thing.
Yeah, for sure. So we are talking about inspiration, muses, and forces that inform creative digital work today with our guests, which we'll introduce in a second. But before we kind of get into that, let's talk about what happened yesterday. Did you see any sessions or have any conversations with anyone that kind of really stuck with you?
Yeah, so I think the session that really got me, and fortunately Michael Walter, who is here actually with us today, was in it. There was this fantastic session which was looking at, it was called Stop, Collaborate and Iterate. I think I introduced it yesterday, or I previewed it. I was sold by the name, but the content was just as good, looking at Liz Neely talking about the way they've been making changes at the Art Institute of Chicago with 3D printing and those sorts of things, and the sorts of collaborations they've been happening and how they've been using that to change the way they're even seeing their practice. And then Micah spoke about what he was doing at Cooper Hewitt, and I think we'll get into a little bit of that as well. What about you?
Definitely. Well, that session was great. I also thought the future of museum digital departments was really great, because I think museums, we're all kind of facing the same things with what is digital and where does it belong and how does it interface with the museum as a whole, and so there were some really great concepts that came out of that. So
right, and I think it was interesting because I felt like the different people who spoke, and there were sort of 4 different panelists, they actually had each come up with a different solution based to their institution, but there were some similarities with the things they were pushing for. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's kind of get into the topic today. But
right,
before we do,
it.
let's thank the people we need to thank. Parska Films, who is here with this amazing 3-camera shoot.
Right, hey guys.
We want to thank them, doing amazing work. We also want to thank MCN for having us and inviting us here. It's been really great, and we just want to show appreciation for them having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk to our guests now. We'll kind of go down the line and introduce first Coven Smith here. Coven is the principal at Kinetic Museums, which provides strategy consultation to museums and the nonprofit sector. With over a decade of experience in museums, Coven's focus is on the transformation of museum culture through the application of 21st century thinking. And he also founded Drinking About Museums, so that is a thing.
That is a thing. Yeah.
It's very definitely a thing. Next up, so we have Micah Walter here, and Micah is the webmaster who is in the Digital and Emerging Media Department at the Smithsonian's Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum in New York City. Now, Micah's work at the Cooper Hewitt has spanned areas of digital content strategy, management and infrastructure planning to low-level programming and development of web apps. Before joining the Cooper Hewitt, Micah received his MFA in Photographic and Electronic Media from Maryland Institute College of Art, worked as a freelance photojournalist in the nation's capital and in the Middle East, which I think is really interesting. And as a photojournalist, Micah has traveled extensively to cover news around the world for clients like Time, the New York Times, and heaps more.
So yeah, and as technology continues to open the world of creative production to a broader spectrum of society, it's important for art museums to open their doors to new kinds of participation and engagement with their collections. So as manager of the Media Lab at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Don Undine's job is to foster a creative ecosystem that encourages a dynamic engagement between museum staff and creative technologists, allowing the museum's content and expertise to inspire while providing fresh ideas with the resources, venue, and freedom necessary to grow.
Now, we've got one other guest, and this is a guest we weren't expecting. He actually made a magical appearance in Don Undine's Ignite MCN talk a couple of nights ago. We have Digital Humanities Unicorn. Now, I believe we have a brief bio.
We have an
for
official
DH.
bio.
Yeah.
So, Digital Humanities Unicorn is the voice of reason, mediating very important museum discussions between curators, artists,
Yes.
hackers, and other folk.
Yes.
Yeah, that's basically true. I kind of do all that. I'm pretty awesome.
So
I won't be speaking to him.
we basically want to kick off this discussion by asking how you got to where we are now. How did you get to the place where you're working, Coven, Kinetic Museums? How did you get from a young, scrappy kid growing up in Florida, I believe, to Kinetic Museums?
Well, I think like all of us, I fell into it kind of by accident and then discovered this community that I loved. So I don't think my story is spectacularly unique amongst those of us at this conference. So, I mean, my background is all in music. I've, music composition and, as Jeffrey knows, I used to play in lots of touring bands and stuff. And I had started doing some database work, and a friend of mine who was a registrar at the Indianapolis Museum of Art said, "Hey, there's a job opening up that I think you might be good for," and it was their collections DBA. And so I got in and just started doing more and more than, I went sort of way beyond my original charter, which again, I think is not unusual amongst those of us at this conference. And just found that it was a sort of problem domain that was really interesting to me. It seemed like there was a lot of opportunity for somebody who had, I don't want to say the sort of background, because I didn't really have that background, but the sort of kind of way of approaching problems that I had. And so I just kind of kept doing more and more. And so, I've been at 3 different museums in the last 10 years, and now just recently decided to strike out on my own and doing that.
Can I just ask, can I pick up on one thing you said? You were talking about that you were doing music, and then you started moving into databasing. Do you think there's a synergy between those two? Was it one playing against the other, or is there a relationship there?
Sure. I think a lot of technology people are either former or current musicians. I mean, I know there's like studies on why that works.
Because it pays better than being a barista if you're a musician.
Right.
And they seem to be good at it. So then that part takes over. And they realize that their band sucks. Not that your band sucks.
Oh yeah?
And so we should probably point out at this point that these two used to play in bands together, I believe. And which is one of the reasons we thought it would be interesting to have you both on the show for this discussion. But before we get
Hi, Micah.
Micah, how about you?
Yeah.
I was in a band once.
Were you?
Too, yeah, in high school.
Death metal?
Yeah, no. I found museums really accidentally also. I was, after grad school, just looking for work and found this job as it was supposed to be sort of a 6-week gig, and it kind of blossomed into a real job, and I kind of love it. It's strange. I had never really considered museums as a career. I never really even thought of it, and when I started working there, it just kind of clicked, and my team built out and got better and bigger, and kind of awesome.
So it seems like, all 3 of you, myself included, kind of have this artistic history in Suze as well. Do you consider the museum your instrument or your creative outlet now?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
Right, that's the end of that discussion.
Okay.
Okay, but how much then do you bring that creativity that you had in sort of formative spaces into what you're doing now? Like, do you think you're channeling almost the same creative energy that you were putting once to other pursuits, and still maybe do in other areas, but is it, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is whether creativity is domain specific. Like, are you creative in different ways because you're in the museum than you were as a musician or as a photographer?
No, I would actually say that the process feels very similar. I mean, at least when I'm having a good day doing museum work, the process feels very similar.
Okay.
You know, and some of that comes from, you know, not just, oh, I have a musical background, but a particular kind of musical background, which is to say, you know, I used to lead a big band, and so you know, I was a jazz composer. And so in a way, like, that sort of informs my approach to problems, which is I like to sort of set up the structure and then sort of like see what happens, like in a way handing it off to other people at that point and sort of seeing what improvisation occurs there. I'm not, you know, although I have a sort of traditional composition degree, I always found that kind of composition extremely restricting. It was really hard for me to have to figure out every single note that needed to be played throughout the piece. I much preferred to sort of get to a certain point and then have there be an open-ended thing and like have this happen. And so, you know, certainly in my approach to working with people and problems in institutions, that's really very much my approach. Like I don't really like to plan out everything to the end of because I just sort of understand that we're going to get to a point where once we're in a very real environment, people are going to do what they're going to do. Right. And maybe I can establish a framework in which that will occur. So yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that it absolutely informs that, and I think to me the creativity feels very similar. You know, I mean, I think I miss the physicality sometimes of playing music when I haven't been playing in a while. I miss that, but you know, for the most part, I'd say it's close.
How about the personal aspect of creating music and creating in a museum and riffing off of other people? Can you guys speak to? I know of the Cooper Hewitt kind of from your session yesterday, Michael. You really touched on the ideas bouncing around and kind of acting as like a, you know, a working kind of group. How's that working, and how does that affect what you do?
I mean, you know, the idea of riffing off other people, other things, is really important. You know, I don't really just consider myself a coder necessarily, even though that's kind of what I do all day. But I look for other little pieces of things I can find out. You know, how to put things together and make new projects that, you know, from kind of rinse and repeating other people's stuff. And yeah, maybe it's copying and pasting, but you know, that's okay.
Right.
Theme and variation.
Yeah.
I think that's actually really interesting, though, that you just sort of said, I don't really consider myself a coder, even though that's what I do all day. Because one of the things I'm really interested in is how you think of yourselves as creative people in this space. Like, I suppose when we were getting to that question of, is the museum your instrument now in some ways, I'm interested in, and Don, I'll sort of ask you this, your sense of self-identity as a creator.
Right.
How does that fit with your sense at work or sort of your job?
Right. Well, yeah, similar to what COVID said, right? A lot of what I try to do is create an environment where people can be creative together. Like I said in my talk earlier, you know, I used to manage the 35-member musical collective of improvisers, and basically my one rule is I would never say no to anybody, and the trick was just to get the right people in the right room and get them sort of entrained together so that they were cooperating. And similarly with running a meetup of digital creatives where you have a little bit of control over who comes in the door, but not 100%, and you're not dictating the state of affairs. Figuring out how to create that good environment where that kind of stuff can happen is really important. But I think what also helps is this, and I think this has happened maybe in the last 5 years or so, is this idea of the coder as a rock star. Right, like the digital creative, like you don't go to a rock show, you know, a modern rock show without them having a visuals person, and that visuals guy isn't just like, you know, playing videos or something, right? He's doing like live RGBD cameras on the bands, and bands have coders now in the band, right? You can go to art shows, and art shows are almost like rock shows with the new digital creative stuff that's going on. So if people are getting, a hackathon is kind of like a jam session, right? And people getting together. And I think that attitude of people forming these small groups of 4 to 5 people that do creative stuff, invade spaces with video projectors and things like that, is very much like a guerrilla rock band sort of thing. So we're just creating a space for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, how important is curiosity to you three? Both, kind of outside of the museum. Like, are you curious? Do you pursue ideas and concepts down rabbit holes to get to something of meaning?
Yeah, for me, it's the most important thing. I mean, that's where I start. I see things. Like I said, I copy and paste things from other people. I see other people in my team doing things, and that gets me really excited about one thing or another, and that always leads to what I'm working on. But yeah, curiosity is key.
Yeah, it was actually interesting in your session yesterday. I thought it hugely interesting that you spoke a lot about creating problems, because I think there's often this discussion about we're looking for solutions, but what you were saying is, oh no, I'm looking for new problems, and then I go and solve them. But actually, I just found it really interesting that you sort of started with the problem itself. Is that, do you think, Koven, are you looking for the right problem to solve, or are you looking for problems, or are you looking for solutions?
Oh no, I'm never looking for solutions. I mean, in a way, I sort of feel like
It's your tagline.
right, yeah. Never looking for solutions since 1975. No, I mean, in a way, it's almost like I feel like the heart of it is actually defining the problem, and I sort of feel like if I get to a point where I define the problem accurately, the solution will become obvious. So. And I guess in sort of tying that back to my background, I think that's sort of the nature of what you're doing. Like writing music where I know what the outcome is going to be, is just tedious. It's like, why would you do it? If it's not an exploration, and if it's not about sort of understanding that there are going to be discoveries along the way, maybe some people enjoy that. I don't, and that's not where I'm coming from, and that's definitely not the way that I approach problems in our space.
So, let's talk about things outside of the museum. Let's talk about muses and life changes. Koven, I know you have a young son at home.
Heck yes, I do.
Yes.
How?
Got a picture? Show us a picture.
Oh.
How do life events like that, kids, or what, maybe it's moving to a new city or something like that. How do you think that affects what you do creatively?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to these guys.
That's a huge part of it. There's no doubt that my decision to kind of go freelance, had everything to do with my son being born. Because I wasn't seeing him. I'd spend an hour a day with him basically at the end of the day when he was cranky and I was tired, and it was just like, well, okay, then why am I doing? What am I working for if I miss out on 6 years of his life? Right. So, absolutely, it influenced that. Now I wake up with him in the morning. I get the first shift while mommy sleeps a little longer, and then I go to work for a while, and then I come back from work and I hang out with him, and then I go to work again, and it's great.
Yeah, it was interesting having Tina Roth-Eisenberg's keynote yesterday, and she was talking about the catalytic effect that having kids was for her. But I think there are sort of all kinds of life changes that can lead to really creative, generative moments in life. What about you guys? Is there something that you can think of that was a really sort of catalytic moment in terms of your creativity? Or, working in the Middle East, for me, I imagine must have been interesting, but that might not have been one for you.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, but it was the same kind of thing, coming to the city. I live in New York City now, and coming to live there was sort of by accident again, and now that I think about it, it's one of my huge sources of inspiration. Just being in that city, I live in Brooklyn, and I commuted about an hour to work, and all along the way there's so much going on, so much stuff to do. It's just been incredible, and the people I've met and all, and all the things that I've done in New York City has just kind of molded like the way I think about the world. It's really incredible. But in the Middle East too, it's just living in Tel Aviv for a long time, that inspired me hugely.
Yesterday you mentioned that you constantly have many tracks going in your mind, and I'm a little concerned at how many things that you're thinking of right now while we're in this session. But I'm sort of interested, was that always the case, or has that been exacerbated then by living somewhere so rich as New York City?
It's always been the case for me, and it's been a big problem when I was in school. It's really hard to focus on homework and stuff like that when you're thinking about all kinds of different things all the time. But now I feel like I've kind of, tuned that thing down to a pretty nice thing, so I can actually get things done. And when I'm thinking about all kinds of different things at the same time, it actually, in the environment that I'm working in now, it actually sort of makes sense, and it's kind of fun for me.
Right. How about you, Tom? The birth of Digital Humanities Unicorn, was that?
Yes, it's pretty much my founding. I think my time as a jet test fighter pilot really formed me. My ability and willing to sort of take risks and realize that like nothing is really that serious, right? You work in an art museum, you do something wrong, no one's gonna die, and once you've like stared death in the face like that, it's a different thing. You don't have to take things quite so seriously, and you can feel more like joy in art. So, and moving to New York.
Yeah. Every time everyone gets really tense at work, I always say, we work in a museum and we're closed, and it's like, that big a deal. Come on.
It's actually. So, Donnie, clearly that was a reasonably funny answer, since we're all sitting here giggling a little bit. But I want to bring up humour, because yesterday you brought up humour when you were talking about your creative responses, and clearly the invention or the creation, the birth of Digital Humanities Unicorn indicates some sense of lightness or humour in the way that you look at the world.
Well, when you work at a particular institution, I was having this conversation the other day where it was like, why aren't people happier? You go downstairs and you're surrounded by all this awesome art, and at the end of the day, usually no one's really, suffered in any tangible way. And why aren't people happier? And I don't know, for me anyways, like, but my thing about having been a musician is I really miss the stage. Can you tell? I really do love attention. And so, humor is a way of reinforcing my sort of self-image as a performer, right? I think the performance aspect of how we do our job is really important, right? Recognizing that when we are in front of people, even if it's any sort of professional environment, you're really sort of on a stage and you're wearing a mask, and your choice of what persona you want to present should be geared towards the kinds of energy that you want to put into a room. And if you go into a room and you're dour and you sit back and you fold your hands, then no one else is having any fun and no one wants to be there. And the next time you want someone to do something for you, they're going to remember that you're not any fun to have around. They're not going to be happy when you walk into the room. And I'd much rather have people happy when I walk into the room to set things on, on a right tone, even if it's a boring business meeting, right? To say nothing of trying to like inspire like digital creatives to do neat stuff, right? You can't go, you can't be a sourpuss.
Let's stay with humor, and because I want to talk about Cooper Hewitt's use of institutional humor in a way. Is that a conscious decision to kind of inspire that, or is it? I mean,
it just happens, We, I think the team we have just likes to have a lot of fun. When we built the new the original Alpha website, that was one of the things that happened naturally, is that we just started finding things we didn't even know really existed. It was sort of a byproduct of building the website. I had never really explored our own collection until then, and it's actually it can be really fun, and really hilarious. There's things in there that just make no sense to me, but they're individually awesome, and we have a lot of fun looking through things and constantly printing out random things we find in the collection and putting them up on the wall, and coming up with ways to think about and talk about the problems we're having, really in a real physical way, with lots of humor. that's huge. That's big.
But that's actually quite interesting, this idea of, I want to say, drawing inspiration from the collection or from what you're doing with the collection. Because obviously this is a conversation about museums, and I'm curious as to whether you obviously do look to your collection for inspiration there. You are the two, Coven. Do you go to the collection or other institutional collections for inspiration, or does it come in different ways?
This will get me in trouble, but no, no, no. Yeah, art is horrible. No, I mean, I love art. There's certain artists that I absolutely adore, no doubt. I wouldn't say that inspiration for my work comes from that, and in a way, because I don't have a lot invested in that, I feel like it allows me to see the issues surrounding it more clearly. You know, like, I mean, in a way, that's why I feel like ultimately I've been far more successful in this field than I ever was as a musician. I mean, not that I did horribly there, but it was just like I cared too much to let go of things that I should let go of.
Yeah.
And in this world, because that sort of the context of the work that I'm doing, I'm willing to let go. I feel like it enables me to address the problem more clearly and more straightforwardly.
So we talked a lot about artistic inspiration and curiosity. I'm curious, Dawn, has there been a person that's been instrumental to you?
A real person.
Yeah, Darth Vader.
Yeah, this guy taught me everything I know. Aaron Coburn. I've had a handful of my first boss when I worked at an ISP who said, "Learn. I want you to sit here and answer phones, and then teach yourself programming because this is how you're gonna get ahead." And just basically let me take time to learn and teach myself things, and put a handful of people who trusted me that I was more than just what I seemed like at the time, that I could do, that I had more potential in me than I saw. I've been fortunate that I've had some people like that in my life who help me go to the next level, and I only disappoint them slightly. So it's pretty awesome.
Right. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, certainly my boss has really opened up the doors to all kinds of possibilities. It's been really awesome to have him. And our former director who passed away actually just explained to me what design was. I was working at a design museum and I didn't really understand why this was so important. And we sat down one time and he was kind of like, everything is designed. This glass, someone considered how it should be shaped and formed so that it feels nice in your hand. Those kinds of things. He really kind of set the tone for everything else.
Right. And I guess that is actually then also bringing in inspiration from other areas. So we get inspiration, or at least I know I get inspiration from really surprising sources and really surprising things. I mean, yesterday, Micah, in your talk, you were talking about drawing inspiration from the idea of wanting a Klaus Oldenburg piece to speak to you. Where do you draw your inspiration from?
I don't know. I mean, it's sort of, you don't really think about it when you're actually drawing the inspiration.
Yeah.
But I love the city. I like going to museums and talks and exhibitions and things like that, and music shows, whatever. I draw a lot of inspiration from other artists, from my colleagues who I work very closely with. It's just the people around me, the things around me. It just kind of happens. It's not really. I don't wake up and say, I need to go draw some inspiration from this exhibition. It looks really good. It's just one of those things that you stumble upon. And the Klaus Oldenburg thing was just like that. I was interested in the show because someone told me about it. I didn't really know who he was, and when I got there, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, look at this. This is really interesting. And next thing you know, I'm thinking about a completely different part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So,
Coven, what do you read that informs you online or authors?
You read?
I mean, do you read anything? I mean, we're talking a lot about music and stuff, but who are some of the great minds that you draw from?
Yeah, the list is not that spectacular. I mean, it's probably the same ones that everybody, but I mean, certainly, I think the first time I read an article by Clay Shirky, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like suddenly, it seemed like he had just, I mean, to be really melodramatic, sort of uncovered my eyes. It was like, oh, he's seeing this problem clearly in a way that no one else has or was able to articulate in such a great way. You know, so a lot of the authors that I like, that I feel like directly inform my work now, I like authors like that, where I feel like no assumption goes unexamined. You know, Stephen Johnson's sort of the same way. You know, so yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of those folks. Edward Tufte's, I mean, a huge one, obviously. So, yeah. I mean, I'll stop there.
I want to know, I'm just sort of going slightly back to what Michael was saying about not knowing where inspiration comes from. What role do you think luck has to do with it?
Luck has nothing to do with it.
It's all intention.
But yeah, I mean, because if we're talking about setting up situations and then seeing
Right.
what happens, how much is
Well, you
luck?
gotta be lucky, and then you've gotta figure out how to. You gotta be able to leap on that luck, right? You gotta be able to ride that wave, surf that train. Help me out here. I got some analogies. When the wind blows, you need a sail.
So it's
right?
the
You gotta have
capacity to recognize
right.
when you've got luck.
Recognize it and be situated, nimble enough to grab it, right? Like I think chances are that lucky opportunities are probably going by all the time. They're probably always happening, and it's just when we're in a position to recognize and grab it and move with it that we call it luck.
Huh. Do you two agree with that?
Oh yeah, I would. Yeah. I mean, well, you know, it's like when you have happy accidents in anything, it's like, you know, that happy accident is usually the result of you creating an environment in which fertile enough for that to occur. You know, and I mean, you know, it's like luck happens every day that you don't recognize.
Right.
You know, it only feels like luck when you're like, I worked hard to get here, and then this great thing happened. And so, I mean, so yeah, you know. I think there's very few things that have happened where I'd be like, oh, that was just a complete roll of the dice and it worked out. You know, I don't think that happens all that often.
So it's more like opportunity creation and realizing like what
Right.
the possibilities are. Right?
Yeah.
Cool.
And I feel like we're already really lucky. I mean, we work in museums. We have really cool jobs.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget it,
absolutely.
but really, we're already pretty lucky.
If you guys weren't working in museums, where would you be working?
Google.
I was helping J-Lo sell tracksuits before this. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, I don't know. I like this work. It's like it's sort of fun. It's hard to imagine doing something else, although I'm sure eventually I'll have to.
Can I go back to, I mean, before we were sort of getting to the capacity to look at things with almost an unbiased or a less biased eye, sort of the difference between when you were talking about music and that really close relationship that you had with it, then the capacity to look at something with a bit of a distance. I'm sort of really interested in terms of thinking about playing within the museum structure, whether you think you can affect more change from the inside or from the outside. And I mean, particularly you're now just sort of going through a role change, but I'm just really interested as to if we're talking about sort of affecting the internal culture of the museum, but also sort of museums in their space in time, I suppose. Do you think there's more power that can come from inside or from outside? I might ask Donnie.
Well, I mean, I think that the things that I'm trying to do could not be accomplished by someone coming in outside the museum.
Right.
Because it takes long-term relationship building to get people to agree to stuff that is sort of outside of their bounds. Most of the things I want to do happen initially because someone pulled a string or said, okay, because I brought them chocolates or, you know, or pizza or something. But also that change couldn't happen without the people that are outside the museum
enabling that, right? Like I try to create a space that's different, sort of like clear pathway, so that outsiders can embed themselves more deeply inside the museum and affect that change. So creating that like a virus, right? Creating a pathway for infection to get in and then spread throughout the institution. But I have to be there to be like the pathogen. That's how am I doing there?
Bring that metaphor home, man. Bring it home.
Right. So it's I mean, yeah, I think to do that in that particular way requires that being there. But I think someone from the outside could come in as a catalyst to help demonstrate that this disease exists that you could be infected with, right? To expose you. I'm really, this is crashing on that.
The metaphor
But
is just...
Just going to let you run out your string on that one.
What about you, Micah?
I mean, I always felt like I am from the outside. You know, I came to museums really
Right.
by accident, and I still sometimes kind of don't really consider myself a museum person per se. And you know, I look at the museum in a completely different way. I had no idea we had so much to talk about as museum professionals. And I didn't realize museums had this much to do. I always sort of thought of them as these, you know, places where people put all this old stuff. And now that I work there and I see what's actually going on behind the scenes, from an outside point of view, it's actually really fascinating, and that's kind of what gets me charged up sometimes. Yeah.
So actually, do you think it is the fact that you didn't have that sort of pre-knowledge, that you didn't grow up with it and wanting it, that then gives you the capacity to think about it in different ways as well?
Yeah, sure. And I think when I first started there, I was kind of excited by the idea that I would be working in a museum because I never really considered it before. And I couldn't really wrap my head around like what they actually do there. You know, I was just sort of like, what are we gonna do? What's going on in here? Now I'm just like, wow, we have a lot to do. It's like it's incredible. You know, it's something people don't realize. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Coven? I mean, kind of coming at it from the outside now. Like, what's your perspective?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't been coming at it from the outside for very long.
Right.
You know, so I don't know that I can speak to that a ton yet. You know, but certainly I will say, having been on the inside, there's something about the friction of being there that I think does create good work. Mm-hmm. And you know, frankly, I'm a little nervous about losing that. You know, like almost in a way, because I've seen what that looks like from the inside when an outsider comes in and, you know, I forget, it was you who said this morning, you know, basically you have an outsider come in and say the same thing that you've been saying all along, and suddenly it's paid attention to. And, you know, if I'm now in the position of being that guy, you know, in a way I'm like, I wonder, like I might kind of miss fighting the battles, you know, because by the time I get called, like that battle's kind of been won. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have another one of these in a couple of years, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a different power, sort of power capacity within each of those positions. Because, as you say, someone can come from the outside and say exactly what you've been saying, and be listened to in a different way, because of their external voice or sort of supposed lack of bias, etc. Whereas if you're on the inside, then you're sort of doing the change, sort of maybe in a way that's less visible, or a way that has less sort of obviousness, I suppose.
Cool. So this has been a really fun discussion. Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go down the line. Don, if somebody wants to find you online or twit with you.
Ampersand Don Undine.
Ampersand Michael Walter.
Ampersand 5 easy pieces.
There is another,
Ampersand is that little @ thing. That's that little thing with the email from the emails.
There's another question that we have to ask though. So we are here at the Museum Computer Network Conference at MCN, and one of the traditions of MCN that is now finally
Wait a minute, sorry,
Guys, Suze has a an ampersand is the...
Then you mean the
Sorry,
@
God.
You guys both made me question that. I was like, I don't think that's an ampersand, but that's what they said.
You're just being
computers.
creative in your...
Sorry. We just destroyed any sort of authority that we might have had.
Wait, no, but here's where you can win it back, Don.
Watch.
MCN, we have a tradition, and it's a tradition of karaoke.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
What I want to know, what's your go-to karaoke song, or what do you intend to sing tonight?
Martika Toy Soldiers.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Micah,
Oh man, I'm a horrible karaokeer.
you and me
Right.
both. I really have to
I'm
rely
not
on
sure
the
why that
hair.
matters.
Is there a good karaoke here?
Didn't I just say Martika Toy Soldiers?
Maybe something by Huey Lewis.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're just playing to
Yeah.
the crowd. Right? Coven?
Man, we'll just do the whole album sports, you and me. That's the way it's going to work.
Yeah.
My go-to, if they have it, would be R. Kelly's remix to Ignition. But they never have the remix. They just have Ignition, which no one has ever heard. So we'll see. If they've got the remix tonight, I'm doing it.
Do you want to give the details about what's about the where and when and all that stuff?
Oh, if I remembered them, I would.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a program there? I'll
Yeah.
find out.
Wait, I certainly have a program, but this won't be broadcast in time for people.
No, but there's
to-
people in the
Okay.
room, maybe watching and
Well, consult
Well,
your
yeah, consult the
your
program,
programs.
that's good.
Yes.
You know, we've bought out the whole place for the night, so we'll be, there will be no one but your colleagues there. There will be very little, probably like on stage solo performing. So don't get nervous and feel like, oh, I can't do that, because everybody will be singing. You're going to be fine. It'll be great.
Can I really quickly ask why karaoke? I know why I go, but I'm really interested, like, why we as MCN, why karaoke?
That's a good question. I mean, I always thought, because we started doing karaoke at MCN like 3 years ago, I think, something maybe. And, by this point in the conference, you're just so overclocked. You've just been like focusing. And typically by Friday night, the tradition had been like, I'm going to just have a lot of beer until I can't think anymore. That's how I'm going to relieve that pressure. And so in a way, karaoke sort of became a healthier way to blow off that steam.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason everybody loves it, is just like, oh, it's this thing that we can go and do and kind of truly relax.
Yeah. and there is a hashtag for karaoke, right? MCN
Yes,
karaoke.
MCN karaoke.
And in fact, we even have the details which we got handed to us from the crowd.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. So karaoke tonight is 10 p.m. at the Lolita Resto Bar Lounge. And it's going to be amazing.
Which
and
is
it's
just a few blocks away
sponsored
from the hotel.
by Johns Hopkins University. And this year it's actually all of the funds raised when people pay their entry fee actually go to a scholarship. Do they not?
Yes, it's a suggested donation at the door.
Yep.
If you don't do the suggested donation, you're kind of a bad person, so be prepared. But
It's like coming to the Met.
Yeah. We should probably edit that out. But so everything you contribute at the door goes to the MCN Scholarship Fund. So you're thinking of the children.
Cool.
All right.
Good cause. So so I think we're gonna button this up here. Thank you again to Parska Films and MCN for having us.
Right.
All of what we talked about, if there's any pertinent show notes, we'll put them on the URL, which is museopunks.org/10.
We're moving into
We're
the...
at double digits. 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, guys.
Awesome. Yeah. Nux.
Yep.
All right. Follow along at hashtag MCNpunks and
Yep.
Museopunks.
And we've got one more show whilst we are here at MCN, and it's going to be a really exciting one. We're talking about the way technology is changing the way we experience the world and what it's doing to our perceptions of the world, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's a super cool topic. So hope to see some people here in the room. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and thanks in the room if you're watching. And, so we'll see you tomorrow.
Awesome. Ciao.
Cool.
All right,
Brilliant.
ampersand.
Awesome.
Thanks for being guys.
I made you say it though.